I know that PC is trying to get on now, so as PC jumps on, then we can get started. Does anybody else have anything, any other questions about anything?
I don't think so, no.
Diane, aren't you coming to the shelter soon? You're coming back?
Yeah, I came this morning. I went this morning, actually.
How was it?
It was great. Getting used to, the mask, mainly when I was walking the dogs, because I think Evelyn wanted us to wear them even just out in public. So I don't know, that was a little much to be walking the dogs and
yeah, that is.
Mask on. It's kind of like, it's kind of hot and wet under there.
Yeah, I know.
It was so nice to be back and so nice to see the pups and, and just for me personally, just as I told my husband, I said, I have somewhere to go and I have a purpose today. So it was great.
Oh, well, I can't wait to see everybody back. I'm going to be starting back this week. And I'm going to be walking dogs. So I'll be seeing dog folks a lot. I'm really excited, especially to see Julio. Julio is one of my favorites. I cannot wait to see him. I cannot wait to get him in the living room and lie down with him because when he tries to put toys in my mouth, I just love that. I think it's the cutest thing. It just makes me feel, it reminds me of when he would play with other dogs at the shelter, and one of the ways that he plays with them is he puts toys in their mouth. So I just feel like, oh, he thinks I'm a dog too. I just feel like I'm flattered. He likes me so much.
Well, we were trying to give Reggie a spa day because, it was very stormy this morning and he was very unhappy. And even being in the living room trying to brush him, he unfortunately wasn't into it. But I started to give him a massage on his neck and his head, and that finally, he kind of settled in and laid down for a little while. But he had a hard morning.
Yeah. Oh, poor Red. And I bet it's harder for him because not all the same people are around him all the time. Of course he's getting, exercise with his staff members, but he doesn't have as many visitors as he used to. And that really affects his response to storms. He's probably one of the dogs with the most people on the teammates and one of the most favorite dogs at the shelter. Volunteers. I don't know anybody who's met him who doesn't like him. Everyone who meets him likes him a ton because he's just a big stuffed animal. What happened to BC? Oh, Emery doesn't have the link.
I sent it to her.
Oh, thanks. All right, well, I guess we'll just start because I don't want to keep you guys waiting. I want to reinforce timely arrivals. Okay, so today we're talking about biting in cats. I'm really excited about it because it's something that I see all the time. And as I was preparing for this talk, I saw so many videos of cats biting people. And one thing that I can see is that people really could benefit from understanding why cats bite. Many of the videos show that people had no idea what was going on, or they interpreted the cat's behavior. Oh, there's Emery. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm encouraging you guys, like I said earlier, I'm encouraging you guys to participate, and so just expect me to ask you for your input about different things in this topic. And especially if you have some experience with some cases, of cats. Like I know, for example, Celine has extensive cat biting experience. I'm surprised that Mary's not here. Oh, there's PC. Hey. Oh, hey, Camille. Hey. There you guys are. Okay. All right, so we're going to start with the PowerPoint, and then we're going to flip back and forth between talking about the different types of biting, and then Suzanne and Stripey will show us some training ideas around biting. point. Who's that barking? Is that Nala?
Yes.
Looking for the thing to share my screen. Might need. Oh, there it is. Oh no. Oh, Suzanne, I think you have to make me the host.
I think I think you should be able to do it now.
Okay. Aha. Okay, there it is. Do you see that? Making sure. For some reason.
Probably your view.
Okay, and now I'm going to put the presentation on. Okay. Does that work? I'm going to check every time now. Okay. All right. So, like I was saying before, biting is, if you guys, the kitchen, maybe want to mute yourselves just for now. Like if any sounds come on in the background, or you can mute yourselves, and then when you want to contribute, you can unmute. So like I said before, biting is so common. The large part of the cases that I see, since I see a lot of cats, I know Beth sees cats, she probably sees biting cases. And so they're so common. The reason why they're so common is because cats bite for many different reasons, right? They bite as an expression of lots of different feelings. So it's easy to understand how a cat can bite out of fear, right? That's usually what we think, or people often think that cats are just excited in their play, and that's why they bite. But a cat could also just be enjoying petting and getting really into it, and they can also bite. Part of that is due to the facet of sexual arousal. So we don't realize that when we pet our cats a lot, we could be getting them kind of frisky. Cats can bite when they're hungry. It's one of the most common reasons that I see cats biting is because they're hangry. They could just be irritable. So it's not really just the common reasons that you think. Cats can bite for just about any kind of feeling. And I don't want it to seem like cats are unpredictable, because that's one of my main messages to people is that cats are they're not assholes. They're not unpredictable. Their behavior is very predictable. And it's just up to us to develop the skills to learn to understand our companions. Biting is also a part of many typical behavior problems. Like, so it could be handling issues. And a lot of that has to do with, the person's inability to read their cat's state of mind when they're being touched. Or it could be due to a genuine fear of being handled. Inappropriate play is very common, especially as we cats from their moms at a very young age, or we might find orphan kittens, that's really common, or we might encourage inappropriate play. It's very common in cats who just haven't learned appropriate ways to get things from people. And biting is very noticeable. Like last time we were talking about how barking is super noticeable in dogs, and that's the way it works. Well, you're not likely to ignore bites from cats, especially if they bite pretty hard. So cats can get our attention by biting. And also it's a very common problem that is secondary to other treatment. So we call that redirected aggression. But it's just, biting is, a cat that bites is not a bad cat. Biting is something that cats do as a species appropriate way of communicating to us, especially when we don't see their other species. Okay, so we're approaching this cat biting problem from the perspective of seeing cases. So if you were a behavior specialist at the shelter and you're going to see a case, the first thing that you would want to do, which is the same as in the conducting behavior consults talk I gave a couple weeks ago, is you just want to let the caregiver have a chance to tell you what's going on. from their perspective in just a couple sentences. So you just say, what's the cat doing? What's the problem behavior here? And then you'll have an idea of what kind of questions that you want to ask more in depth. So you don't necessarily want to know everything about the cat, although if the problem is a little bit more difficult to understand, or if it's a multifaceted problem, I might ask lots of questions. But if you have the feeling that the cat is biting, because it's inappropriate play, then you know what questions that you should ask. And then you get your more in-depth history, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, and you can review this in the recording of the behavior consult talk. But generally you want to know like the age of the cat, and where did the person get the cat, how did the cat grow up, what the daily schedule is for the cat, and who are the other members of the family with the cat. There's those are kind of general questions. Also information about the actual problem behavior, like when did it start, describe lots of details about the first time that it happened, describe the latest time that it happened, and any kind of specific situations where the behavior happened in between. And I always ask, if I don't have an idea of what's going on with behavior, or for added information as I continue on with the case, I ask people to log every time that the cat bites. Because, and the information you get is what happened before, what happened after, and what was the cat's body language like at the time of the bite. And what that does is it gives us a baseline. Like I recently saw a case where the cat was biting the woman 5 times a day. It's often every day. And then as you get an idea of what that's all about, and the log helps the caregiver also understand why this is happening, because they don't always want to take your word for it, especially cat caregivers for some reason. And, it'll have the effect of letting the caregiver know whether the protocols you've given them, whether the recommendations are working, because they can see over time the behavior changing. And it can give you that information, because if the behavior is staying the same, or if it's getting worse over time after you've consulted with that person, you'll really want to know that you need to change what you're doing. So, all right, so I'm not going to talk too much about the humane hierarchy. We've done this before, but just so you all know, this is our approach. This, before you do any training, before you make any real recommendations, you'll want to evaluate the physical condition of the cat and make sure that they're fulfilled, they get enough enrichment. I've changed this up a little bit from the talk about, because specifically for cats, you'll want to know things like obviously if they're in any discomfort or pain. You'll want to know what the feeding schedule is like, because that's really closely related to biting. You'll want to know, are they, are the people good about taking care of the litter box, keeping it clean? Is that done regularly and to our recommendations? And is the cat declawed? Super, super important before anything else. And specific enrichment needs are being met. So I find this is a really big and common problem with all caregivers, but especially for cats. Because why do people get cats? Aside from disliking cats.
Because they're easy to take care of.
Yeah, well, they're supposedly easily cared for, and that's the kind of pet that you get when you're working, 5 days a week, and you're working, your 8-hour days or 9-hour days. It's often here in Texas. And that cat can be left home if you go on vacation. People will just kind of leave their cat, with a bunch of food and automatic feeder. They just make sure that they're kept alive. But and the other thing is that people get cats because they have small spaces. Well, now we know that cats have lots of enrichment needs, especially if you think about what cats would do when they're living outside, right? We know that they hunt for much of the day. They, kind of alternate sleeping and hunting, but they're active because they have to work to get their food. And that lives on too in your domesticated cat. They want to work for something, and they want to work several times a day for something. And space-wise, people think, well, cats are small, so they don't need a lot of space. But we know now that cats out in the wild, they roam for acres and acres and acres. So, 2 cats in your 1-bedroom apartment, that's really cramped for space, and that can cause a lot of issues. That can cause inter-cat issues, but it can also cause issues with people. So, I try to help people understand that, because a lot of people's expectations of cats are different from the reality. So let's talk about, just really quickly, just give me, just a few types of enrichment that you think are essential for cats. And I just listed, kind of general enrichment types that I think are very important. Investigative play, investigative enrichment. So that means giving cats abilities to climb and check out things and look for things and find things, be surprised by things. Interactive play, that's, play with you, and foraging enrichment. So specifically, can you give me, just a few of your ideas of what are the key avenues for enrichment for cats?
I mean, I think being able to explore. I have a friend who keeps a bird feeder outside the window for her cats so they can look and discover.
Yeah, definitely. So you can take a cat tree and put it by a window and put a feeder out there to attract wildlife. You can feed, you can hide, food on the cat tree so the cat can, use their investigative skills to find that food and feel fulfilled in that way. Any ideas?
Something I've noticed with kittens, especially, just because you have toys, that isn't always necessarily enough. You got to make sure that you're changing them up consistently and keeping everything fresh. I think that's something that some people like. You can get your cat plenty of toys, but after 2 weeks of staring at the same toys that are just sitting on the ground, it's not that much fun, is it?
Right, yeah. And I mean, I find that this is super common, that people, I'll say, well, you really need to, play with your cat. And they'll say, well, they have lots of toys. They have so many toys. You have no idea how much money I've spent on toys. But, are those toys out all day, kind of getting stale? They're just, it doesn't matter how many toys your cat has if they're out all day, all the time. So yeah, switching up the toys. Let's say you have 20 toys out and you have a few of them out each day. Also having a variety of toys. So you have like those little balls and little mice and things that make sounds, but also toys that play back. Like a really cheap one is a cat dancer, which is a wire with a little bit of cardboard at the end of it, and it bounces around. But then there are also toys that are, they're automatic, they're automated toys. Like there's a little mouse that like comes out and your cat can swat it, and then it goes and it hides somewhere. There's this thing that it's like a cover and there's something underneath, and it moves around by itself. So the different types of toys are really important. So what else can you think of?
I know something that my cats love doing is scratching. It's not, they seem to really get very strongly enriched like that. So we've had to get, I don't know how many scratching posts we have, but we have a lot because they like just using different types.
Right, you have to think about species appropriate behaviors, like basking and scratching. And when you think about scratching, also keep in mind the preferences of the cat. Like, without getting too much into it, there are just so many different types of scratchers out there, and your cat might have a preference for one, or they might need a variety of scratchers. You know, think angle, think location. You know, you can train cats to use scratchers, and that can be very fulfilling for them. So speaking of training, that's an interactive activity, and that's super important. So cats have been shown to prefer interactive play more than, you know, more than petting, more than just toys. And it's just about the same as really, really highly valuable food. So it's important multiple times a day to give your cat the ability to interact with you, either through interactive play or training. It should be pretty structured, and it should be at regular times during the day. So those are things that people don't think about. And remember that those are things that you have to consider before you even look at, you know, whether the cat likes petting or not, or, you know, before you actually start working on the problem, before you start teaching them an appropriate behavior to substitute for biting, you have to make sure that these things are happening for the cat. And the reason I'm being so adamant about that is because usually they're not. Okay, so, and the rest of the stuff is the same. And we'll talk about specific examples of management and counter conditioning and using positive reinforcement. And know that, you know, there's really very few examples of when you would ever use negative reinforcement or when you would have to use negative punishment. I mean, not that it's bad, and I can definitely think of situations, but that's really not the first thing that would come to your mind. And a skilled trainer, that definitely wouldn't be one of the first things that they would recommend. Okay. So, and this is all the same as for the dogs, because in reality, dog training and cat training are really the same. Dogs and cats learn the same way. And so do humans, and so do horses, and so do rabbits, and so do fish. Okay. So after you've evaluated whether the cat is healthy and pain-free and they're fulfilled, then you want to make sure that they're not dealing with any stress, right? So I always, if I can see the behavior happening, I'm going to look for distress. If I can't see it, I'm going to make sure, I'm going to ask the caregiver to describe behavior and see if they need any help being able to read behavior. And then if you see distress, you're going to use counter conditioning. You're going to deal with that distress first before you even start doing any training. So it's like all the humane. Okay, and if you want, you can ask me more questions about that later. It's just because we've gone over it before. So here's just a quick and dirty, you know, description of cat body language. I can talk for hours about cat body language, so let's just keep it simple. So in this talk, we're just going to kind of refer to whether cats are just relaxed or whether they're starting to get aroused or excited or showing stress. So, you know, this is just generally what you would look for, you know, tension in the body. You would look for, you know, the tension in the muscles around the eyes, which makes, you know, the eye contact seem soft or hard. You would look at the duration of eye contact. And when I say eye contact, I don't necessarily mean that the cat is looking at you in your eyes. I mean that the cat could be looking at your hand. They could be looking at things, whatever the offender is. So you're looking for, you know, whether they're blinking or whether there's prolonged contact. So a relaxed cat, as they're moving, their movements are very smooth and flowing from one to the next. For cats who are distressed, for cats that are trying to tell you to stop doing something, they're really aroused, their movements will be really quick. So I'm usually thinking about like the head or the tail of the cat. So you usually think about lashing tails, or we call the movement with the head like a closed or open up head turn. So cats can do that when they're trying to tell you that they're going to bite you. So they might do that way before the bite. Look at what the ears are doing. So, you know, get to know your cat and to know what their neutral ears look like, and know that when they're going to go sniff you and when they're anticipating they're going to be petted, they might move their ears back a little bit. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're feeling mad, or it doesn't mean that they're not receptive. It's just, natural for cats when they're moving their face close to something that they turn their ears back a little bit. For a distressed or aroused cat, you might see that the cat's ears flatten or rotate back, and they might do it and hold their ear in that position, or they might do it really briefly and flick their ears back. Cats who are relaxed can also bite you, but their bites are usually pretty soft, whereas cats who are more aroused will bite you harder. So, the higher the arousal level is, the more likely a cat or a dog will hurt you. So it doesn't really matter, and I'm trying to really stay away from interpreting what the cat is feeling, like whether the cat is, angry or excited, stuff like that. We're just kind of looking at their bodily arousal levels. Vocalization, like growling and hissing and spitting, those are, obviously more distress signs of distress. So if a cat were playing, they might be less likely to make those vocalizations. I find that people find it really difficult to tell the difference between when cats are playing and when they're serious and distressed. And then the last thing is something that people really don't pay attention to is the cat staying close and present, like actively, welcoming the touch as opposed to just tolerating it. So, the opposite is they actually move away or lean away, or they just kind of stare into space and they look like they're ignoring you and they're letting you pet them. That's a bad sign. So, what's funny is I was, preparing for this talk, and I was looking at all these videos, like I was telling you before. And so one of the things was I was looking for a video of love bites from cats, because a lot of people have trouble, and maybe call it human vanity, or, very human-centric thing is that we would prefer to believe that the cat was giving us love bites. So real love bites are not quite as common as bites that happen because a cat's irritable. So I was searching for love bites, and I came across this video. So as you watch this video, look for these different signs of the cat. What's the body language like? What are the different things that you're looking for? You can shout things out. We'll watch it more than one time.
The ears seem to be maybe drifting backwards, like maybe it's more irritated than relaxed.
Yeah, see? Yeah, she's done, and this has happened more than one time. This is not the first time this woman has annoyed this cat. You could see that before she even touches her.
It looked like he disengaged from being petted about like second.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Like, no thanks.
Go away! He's even using his paw. The fucking humans not understand.
Yeah. I know, this poor person does not understand, and this poor cat. Yeah, so I'm gonna stop it, and then we can just kind of discuss a little bit, and then we can watch it again. Okay. So, so what did you see? So we saw, I think it was Joe said, I can't see all of you, so I'm just guessing by your voices.
Yeah, so from what I saw is that the cat disengaged was not really into getting petted from the very beginning. Like,
right, and how did you see that?
He looked away from her, and he did not make any eye contact at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as soon as she saw the woman approaching, her ears rotated and she looked away like, oh, look at that over there. And yep, that's that right away before the lady even touched her. What else?
Yeah, it really looked like the cat was doing like an eye roll. Oh, here she comes again. Cat's eyes. Like, no.
That's like, oh no, it's that person. And you know what? This cat actually seems super nice. Like the cat seems super nice and super tolerant. It's that person who's like nervously laughing, like, oh, you know, like, I'm not liking this, please stop. And like, you know, that nervous laugh that, you know, people do. You know, I've talked to my kids a lot about displacement signals. I mean, I don't call it that, but they know that if I laugh, they're like, Mom, are you mad at me? Because that's, you know, we have different ways. That cat does not want to fight with that person. You can see that right away. Let's watch again. And this, oh, this is the, oh yeah, that's fine. So did you see that cat wasn't interested, like way before she even touched her? Like, oh, looking around, maybe I might want to run away. There's the ears.
It's
Like looking away. See that? Like if you're petting a cat and the cat's just kind of looking at something else, seems distracted, they're not into it. She's not into you. And there's that quick look. You know, she looked really quick and the lady had a chance to pull her hand away. And I don't know if you can hear, but she's like, oh, you do love bites. I know you do love. The cat's like, ah.
Really? You didn't go
You know, there's that hard stare. Did you see that? She stared at her hand really close.
Also, it seems like her pupils are getting more dilated as she goes.
Yeah. Oh, here's some displacement grooming. Ah. So like she finally, like if she were a human, Cleo would have punched this lady at this point. She definitely would have filed a report.
Poor cat.
I know. But you know what? This happens all the time. And the lady, you know, just didn't know, right? So this is an education. This is an education opportunity. Okay. So let's go on. Come on. Okay. Right. All right. So actually, here's Mary Pattison's video that she posted on the Facebook the other day. So these are the real love bites. So what love bites really look like. In that the cat is very, very relaxed and actively soliciting affection at the time that they bite. So it's a very smooth process between soliciting affection and biting. Very often it's like a drive-by bite. Like the cat is rubbing against you and they kind of gently touch you with their teeth in the side of their mouth. And, you know, of course, there's the other stuff going on, like bunting and purring, and the cat's just really into it and really looking at you. There are two types of attention-seeking biting. There is, you know, the kind of biting where the cat is in the middle of getting petted, they're really enjoying it, they're really soliciting actively at the very moment, and they might be getting kind of sexually aroused. You know, it's kind of a weird topic, but it's true that the sexual arousal contributes to a fair amount of biting with cats. And then the other type of attention-seeking biting is where the person's just kind of hanging out, they're working, they're not available, they're watching TV, and the cat comes over and just bites their hand. And then the person might respond by talking to the cat or saying no. And then when the cat stops, you know, the cat just waits there, and then the person pets them like, oh, good cat. And in the cat's mind, that behavior has been rewarded because, you know, the bite got the person's attention. In this case with Fluffy biting Mary Pattison, you can see that, you know, it's just part of her affection. So you can see like Mary's like really petting a lot of petting there. Oh, do you see that? Do you see how like how Fluffy kind of was rubbing and nibbled the side of her hand, very like inhibited biting? In the end, let me just see here, like I repeat it again. Yeah, so that's again, that was one bite. And then let's see, she does this other one. Yeah, so I think Joe was mentioning on Facebook that looked like an oppositional bite, that second one. Am I right?
Well, I actually thought that the cat was ready to kind of jump off her lap at the beginning of the video.
Here, let's watch.
And then it's like kind of, but from the angle, it kind of looked like the body posture. She was like, she kind of here, no. It was earlier than that, but like she wanted to get off, but then she decided to actually stay for the pets. But I may be wrong. That's what.
Yeah, I think like to me, the way that she bites her, that kind of rubbing, biting with the side of the face. But I do think one thing that could be messing up is
going to leave here. See how she kind of walks towards the laptop and like her whole body shifts forward?
Watch these things over and over again.
Yeah. About here?
You mean like here? Let's see if I can get it.
It was about seven seconds, but between like 5.
Yeah, like here. Right there. Ah, you can't like.
Kind of more or less from here. Kind of like her, because she moves there and then her body shifts forward. Like,
yeah, I mean,
jumping off.
To me, it looks like she's pushing her butt up.
Okay.
Yeah, because she is like, her front paws are up on the toes. It's possible. But if she were going to jump off, her front paws would be more back. But it's possible. So I've been seeing Mary about Fluffy's biting, and generally speaking, so the behavior happens in different situations. It happens while she's petting. So the first thing I was thinking, as usual, I wanted to rule out that she was experiencing distress when Mary was petting her. But then I had her fill out a log, and I also watched videos of her, or watched like real-time images of her petting Fluffy. And Fluffy definitely would come up to her and solicit affection, and if Mary did not pet her, she would bite her in the same way. And the kind of side bite is typical. And so this definitely looks more like attention-seeking biting to get her to pet. And especially because there's just a long history of Mary petting her when she's, after she bites. The bites happen in and around the petting. So it's not just after Mary pets her, but it's also before. And it's before and after Fluffy solicits affection. So, so one thing I noticed that Mary is doing that could be different. What do you think it is?
She doesn't stop petting. She keeps on petting.
Yeah.
She doesn't ask for consent at all.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. She just pets. I mean, that is heavy duty petting. So if Fluffy is getting sexually aroused, well, no wonder. She's like really, well, she's really going at her. So here's some just recommendations. So that was that's one thing that I noticed. Also, she kind of, so if there is any oppositional petting, she doesn't really let her go. She's like, her hands are all over her. Her hands are in the front and in the back, and if Fluffy wanted to go, she couldn't go. Anything else? Okay, I thought that it looked like you guys were going to talk, but it's really hard to read through the computer. Okay, so the things that I would recommend in this situation where cats are, so let's say the cat is just getting overly aroused or sexually aroused when you're petting them, I would say to, so there's something I call petting etiquette, or it's like consent testing. It involves consent testing because you want to make sure that the cat is receptive, but also it's the idea of just petting a few seconds at a time. So, you know, like if you, depending on how well you know the cat, so, you know, maybe 3 to 5 seconds at a time. And when you think about it, that's quite a long time. And then giving a pause to let the cat have a chance to ask you for more pets. So the general petting etiquette is, you know, only pet when the cat asks you for petting. And then when you do pet them very briefly, and then give them a chance to let you know that they're still available, and also giving them a chance to kind of calm down. And just wait a moment, and then when they ask you for more petting, then you can pet them. Some other things that you can do are you can make sure that the cat learns that there's certain time and situation where you're available to pet them, right? So this is really good for the cats who bite you to initiate petting. So that's a bit different from what we saw in the video, but Fluffy also did that. If Mary was kind of hanging out, working, especially since we're working from home, we see that. So what you can do is you can schedule times for petting for that cat. This is especially important for cats who are aggressive about the way that they solicit petting. Like they can bite you and hurt you because they want you to pay attention to them. Am I wrong, Celine? Didn't Barney do something like that? Like he was biting you pretty hard for attention. I don't see her, but I'm assuming that she's there. And, oh, she did?
Yes, he started to bite once, and then a second and third time. But at the end, as I kept him almost 6 months, I think. I could anticipate, you know, I can see in his face that he was on the way to bite. So as you recommend me, I say touch, and he did touch, and he changed his mind. But
right.
It was when he needs attention. I was, for example, in the kitchen, and he just come and bites. And
yeah, so he wanted something from you in the kitchen.
In the kitchen, or it could be, but I remember I have twice he started to bite. I couldn't see what he wanted, and he really started to bite, and many times, and I have to take a pillow to protect my leg, and then to run in another room because he didn't stop to bite. So
right, like demanding biting can be pretty uninhibited. So we'll talk about that next. But it's a good idea to let cats know that there is, you know, that they will get petting at a certain time, and especially if you're working from home, you want them to know that your attention is not available. So schedule times, and having, you know, a petting mat, you know, like you can train your cat to station and reinforce that with petting so that they know that when the mat comes out that it's petting time. Also, like just managing those situations, you know, so if you have to work, then that might be a time for your cat to do some kind of other activity. Like, that's when you would set out some foraging toys, or you might even have to completely, put them in another room. Okay, so let's, and also, this differential reinforcement. So that's teaching them to do the other acceptable behaviors. So let's switch over to Stripey and Suzanne, and they're going to first demonstrate the petting etiquette, like, how to properly pet, and then also maybe show us how to train a more appropriate behavior. Oh, should I stop sharing?
Yeah. Okay, let me. Okay. So I guess what I would say about these, well, I actually have both of them in here. These two at the moment, I don't really want to interact. I guess it's a strange time for me to be interacting with them because we normally interact with them either in the morning, in bed, or in the evening. So you can see actually neither of them want any petting. Oh. Hi. Yeah, you can see. They're really.
Thanks.
Hello, Tiggy.
Good night.
Yeah. I'm just showing her my hand. Oh, there you go. And that's it. So maybe I'll try and see, because I would like to try and teach them a little bit to offer.
Yeah. Do you mind if I just interject real
Yeah,
quick?
cool.
So basically, Suzanne was trying to see if they would solicit petting because, according to the petting etiquette, you won't pet cats unless they solicit. So there was like a tiny little bit of a rub there, but, reading body language is so important, and knowing when a cat is receptive for petting. So Suzanne opted out of, she opted out of petting because it's just not the time, and that's what pet etiquette is all about, or petting etiquette.
Yeah. So now Tigger is actually, and you can't see he's doing it. Let's see if you can see. Nice. You can see she really isn't that interested in the pets. No.
So is it not recommended to walk up to your pet and walk up, to your cat and pet them as long as you walk away, or should you always wait till they initiate?
Did you hear that, Melissa?
Oh yeah, I thought that you were going to answer.
Oh yeah, I can answer. For me, I never try and initiate anything too much with any of my animals. I really leave it up to their choice. If they want to initiate contact with me, either my dogs or cats, then they're going to come and do it. And, these guys, they normally know if I show them my hand, if they want to pet, if they want to be petted, they'll rub quite frantically against my hand. So that's them telling me that they want petted. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I'm just accustomed to when I come home, they'll be, lying in the cat tree, and I walk in the room and I give them a few pets and I walk away. And I never thought about that as, being annoying to them. So I'll have to change my habit.
I think that, so if you have a really established relationship with your cat, or, regardless, I think you should always be looking for how well your affection is received. So with the cat that you know really well, that assessment's going to happen really quickly. Like you can just go up to them and you can see at any moment whether they're receptive. If you don't know a cat, then it might take a little bit longer to see, whether they, you might approach them a little bit more slowly, and you might know their individual signals less well. So
Even in the shelter, I mean, that was part of my routine when I came in for a shift, and when I left for a shift, I would say hello to each of them, and I would say goodbye to each of them. Because if I just I waited for them to initiate, then no one would ever come to initiate it from me.
It doesn't mean that you can't go up to them, but if they don't seem, so you wouldn't go ahead and pet a cat if they didn't look like they were receptive. It's just because they're individuals, just like we are. And, when I come into work, I don't hug.
I'll have to talk to my husband because he likes to ignore them. He
Oh,
thinks,
no, that's even worse. I think, most of the time I think it's innocent and the person didn't really realize that when I was ignoring them, that they were just kind of tolerating it and they might not like it. Like, I'm trying to think of a human example because it's easier for us to understand. Like I might have a really good relationship with somebody.
It's kind of like, not everybody's a hugger.
Yeah, not everyone's a hugger. So, the cats might want to greet you with a nose touch, right? So not every cat will want to be petted. And I think it's important to gauge that. I guess that in short, you want to have a dialogue. You want to engage every animal in a dialogue when you approach them. It sounds kind of hippy-dippy, but the truth is that cats have preferences and not all of them prefer to be petted right away. And not all of them prefer to be petted at all. So yeah, I mean, I think you might do it when you come into the room with the cats. You might, and you might engage them in a dialogue and not even know, right? Like you might come in and sometimes if we've spent a lot of time with cats and we really are sensitive to them, I might not in my mind think, oh, Agatha is, she is, her eyes are soft and she's blinking at me and she's, leaning towards me. I'm not always thinking that step by step in my mind, but because I've been around cats a lot, I've internalized that. And you might too. So approaching cats and petting them is not a bad thing as long as you're at some level aware of how receptive they are.
So I guess, I can demonstrate. So this one's Tigger. And that was a perfect example. Like even when I tried to touch her, she very adamantly moved away. So she will let me pet her, but you can actually see.
Oh no.
I know, moving her body. It's very obvious she doesn't want to be touched right now.
Oh yeah, and look at her tail. It's like, Mom.
She's like, Mom. So one thing that we talked about that we can actually do with our cats to try and get them to work with us and kind of help communicate when they do want to be touched is teach them that, we show them our hand quite loosely, and then Tigger will actually rub her hand against me when she wants to be touched. But right now, they have not a lot of interest in it. Hi. Yes. You can see Stripey's actually avoiding my hand. Oh, you guys can't see her. Let's try. Really not very.
I think it's great because they're really showing subtle signs of, no, I don't want that. I want the food.
Yeah.
So what do you do if they're vocalizing and you can't figure out what they want? So if they have food, they have water, the litter box is clean, and you don't know what they want.
I mean, at the time that they're vocalizing, it can sometimes be difficult to find out. So what I would do is I would keep a log, because then you'll see what happens immediately after the vocalization. So at the time, it might seem really frustrating because you don't quite know what they want, but
Right.
at the time you can do some detective work to see what usually happens after, so, if your cat is, usually meowing, I don't know, most of it's obvious to me, like meowing, in the morning because you get up and feed them after. But the data shows the way. It shows everything.
Usually just go.
Behaviors don't happen over and over again for no reason. There's a reinforcer there that's making the behavior happen.
Like, my kitty vocalizes quite a lot, and I usually do the same thing. You've got water, you've got food, you've got your litter box is free, empty, and yeah, that's the time for treat, which means that it's time for some training, and that's usually what she wants.
So, Susan, can you describe to us what you're doing there? So she's not quite rubbing on your hand, but you've got something going on.
Yeah, so with this one, so I guess with Tigger, she's actually touching my hand. So when she rubs on my hand, I'm just rewarding her. For Stripey, she's not even interested in really touching my hand right now. So I'm more shaping the behavior. So I guess, because these are my cats, I know them very, very well. So I know they're not going to bite me. They're not going to take a swipe at me. If this was an unknown cat, I would start with this training at a much further distance. We do it with a lot of our Frady cats, and, kind of show her my hand. And if she looks at it, I'll reward her. And then you can slowly, let the cat. If she looks at my hand, I reward her. If she approaches my hand, I will reward her. If she sniffs my hand, I'll reward her. If she rubs against my hand, I'll reward her. So really reinforcing that, interacting with my hand is a good thing. You want to talk? Is there anything else, Melissa?
You can see really that the auto shaping there is having some kind of effect, and it makes it a little bit difficult. Like training affectionate behavior is hard because the cat knows that they're working for food at this stage. And I totally recommend training these new behaviors with food just because it's a bit easier, although some cats will work really well for petting. And in that case, if you have a cat that will work for petting, then you can use petting as a reinforcer in this situation when you're teaching them the appropriate behavior. But if your cat at the time, for whatever reason, when you're training will not work for the petting, then you can shape the behavior with treats or capture the behavior with treats. And then later, when you're in a situation when you want the cat to solicit petting with this behavior, then you can start rewarding it with actual petting. It's kind of like Celine was trying to teach her cats to station on a mat or it was Bianca, because Bianca wants to bother her when she's eating. And I'm just assuming that Bianca is bothering her when she's eating because Bianca wants food. That's just my assumption. But Celine wants to train her to do the behavior with toys, with play. And that's fine. Bianca can learn to do the behavior with play, but as you kind of move towards the situation where you want her to ultimately perform that behavior as a substitute behavior for a less desired behavior, you'll want the reinforcers to be the same. So if Bianca is bothering Celine when she's eating because Bianca wants food, then and Celine wants Bianca, instead of bothering her, to station on a mat, then the reinforcer for the stationing has to be food too. So in this case, with Stripey and Tigger, eventually you would reward them with petting, for soliciting petting, or for doing the bunting.
Well, can you help me out figure out what I should be doing or what I'm doing wrong? Because I tried, so I'm trying to get one cat to come out of hiding around the other cat. And
okay.
So the cat, Sasha is the cat that hides. So I wanted Sasha to come out when the other cat is in the room. The other cat is Evie. So I'm waiting for Sasha to come out. And so I had treats and I was feeding her treats. But then the other cat starts attacking her every time she comes out.
Oh, yikes. So this sounds like an inter-cat conflict case. So if you don't mind, can we save that for our inter-cat conflict talk?
Yes, absolutely.
Kind of stick to our biting people just for now because we have limited time. But you can definitely write me about it. But I'm hoping to do an inter-cat conflict talk just because that's so common. Okay, so while Suzanne does that, let's go on. Excuse me. So, share screen again.
And can I just also say that it is easier to train one cat at a time.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So interestingly enough, I think that Stripey, in this case, Stripey's not likely to do attention-seeking biting on Suzanne just because she's not as, she's not as driven to do that, right? Am I right, Suzanne?
Yeah, these two don't really bite me ever.
They don't bite you ever. So, I mean, this is just kind of just a demonstration because they don't really exhibit that problem behavior. Okay. So let me see if I can get this thing to work. Okay, so this is demand biting. So, on some level, it's hard to categorize these different types of biting because on some level that biting to get attention is a kind of demand biting, but sometimes biting is for demanding something else that's not affection. If the biting is affection related, it tends to be more inhibited. But if the cat is demanding food, for example, this is really common. I'm going to use that as my main example there is hangry cats and biting. I have seen so many hangry, bitey cats, or so many cats that are biting because they're hangry recently. So I think it's important to cover that. So in contrast to this kind of affectionate biting, demand biting for something like food is in a cat who's pretty aroused and just comes up to you more directly, and they might bite you a little bit harder, and they'll look at you, especially in your eyes, and they'll make some prolonged eye contact with you, kind of like, move, do what I want you to do. This is very similar to if you're sitting in the cat's spot and the cat wants that spot. They might stare at you like this, move, and if you don't move, they'll bite you. So, so usually this happens where the caregiver is just kind of minding their own business. They're sitting around, they're watching TV, or a lot of the times it'll happen in the middle of the night or early morning that the cat will come up to them and be like, hey, get up, I need something. And the first thing that I do before anything else is really review how the cat is fed. Especially if this could happen with any cat, but especially like young male cats, I find this is very common behavior. So I always kind of look at what their feeding schedule is like, because and when I say that cat's not fed adequately, I'll go into it, but it's usually cats that are fed like twice a day, or somebody kind of leaves out some dry food all day long. So, then of course you got to look at the pattern of consequence. So after the bite, the person gets out of bed and they feed the cat, right? Or the cat bites the person because they want the person to move on the couch, and then the person gets up to get away from the cat, and then the cat the couch. So here are some recommendations. The first thing is when you're reviewing how the cat is fed, check to see if they're fed enough, right? A lot of people under pressure to prevent their cats from getting too fat will reduce the amount of food the cat's getting, but So I've noticed that some cats are not getting fed enough. So what you would do is you would check the cat's basal metabolic rate, which is, you can use that to figure out how much the cat, how much energy the cat burns. And I don't know if I can click on this, if it's gonna work. Oh, here you go. Okay, so here's a calorie calculator. So you can figure out how many calories your cat needs every day by weighing them. And you can add here if the cat is spayed or neutered or intact, because intact cats burn more. You can, see how much they're eating, and then also their body condition. So if they're really fat or if they're a bit skinny, you'll know how much to feed them from there. So then you can find out, how much cats need to eat, how many calories they need, and compare that with the food that you're using, and then you'll know how much to feed. So I found that many cats, just by kind of changing how much they're fed and how often they're fed, can really affect them. So speaking of how often they're fed, I encourage you guys to check out the American Association of Feline Practitioner feeding guidelines, because people are often surprised by how often cats should be fed. So when I was growing up and as a young trainer and working in shelters, I've always seen cats getting fed like twice a day, and it was really common for people to just kind of leave food out for the cat. But it doesn't mean that the cat's going to eat all of the food, because it's not quite fresh. It's nice to, be fed multiple times a day, because you know that the food's going to be fresh. And because cats naturally want to hunt multiple times a day and eat lots of small meals. So if you just feed the cat once a day, not all cats are always going to go back to that big bowl of food, and then they're going to feel hangry, and then they can take that out on you. So I love that. I think every cat caregiver should have a copy of the AAFP feeding guidelines, because they don't realize that some cats are just happiest fed as many as 6 times a day, and there are creative ways of doing that through foraging toys. So I also say that at those times where the cat's hangry, if you can't feed them directly, like if you can't get up and get them food at that time of day, you want to make sure that they can't get to you. So usually if it's at nighttime, I usually ask that the person not allow the cat to have access to them. So, not access to the bedroom. And then also you can have a timed feeder go off in the middle of the night. All cats, this is included in the AAFP guidelines, all cats need to have night feedings. So, many cats can manage without it, but the ideal situation would have night feedings for every cat. Okay, just realized that I'm not on the presentation mode. Oh wait, I was on the presentation mode. It's like not really working right. Ta-da! Okay. The other thing is change how the cat can get food. So I did mention foraging toys. It's a great way to do multiple feedings. Have you guys heard of no bowls? It's like a type of feeder. It's like a little mouse-shaped toy, and there's a hole in it. And the no bowl feeding system comes with a little measuring cup, so you know that you know how much you're putting in each little thing. And it's a tiny little mouse, so you can have 6 of them and put 6 of them out in different places and have your cat find them.
I think it's called Phoebe and Friends, and I can bring
that.
that.
Oh yeah, they've changed it. You're right. Yeah, I think that is it Phoebe and Doc or something like that? I know they changed, that company bought the No Bowl, so they changed the name. Sorry, got to stay with the times. Or it's easy as taking a bunch of old used toilet paper rolls, empty toilet paper rolls, and just putting their dry food in there, or using a licky mat for wet food. So there's all sorts of things. I really love, there's this website that I often refer folks to. I didn't put it here, but I can post it on our Facebook group I think it's Food Puzzles for Cats, something like that. It's a very, very nice name, which for some reason I never remember, but my computer always remembers it. But I'll post it on our Facebook group that shows all the different types of enrichment activities that you can use in conjunction with food. Okay, so the other thing is training, right? People don't usually think of training with cats, but teach cats appropriate behaviors that they can do to earn those food rewards that they want so bad. So if the cat is demand biting for food, training is really recommended. And you can do exactly what Suzanne was doing, where she was teaching the cats to touch her or nudge her, because it's really important to teach the cats appropriate behaviors that you can notice. So teaching a cat to sit is not going to be so helpful, because when you're sleeping in the middle of the night and your cat's sitting there like, hey, I want food, you're not going to notice that, right? So you want to teach the cat to do something that will wake you up and help you notice them. Or when you're sitting and watching TV and your cat wants something from you, it's better for them to nudge you than to bite you. Okay. All right, so here's, a very, very common problem, or a common complaint, let's say. I think that actual play biting is much less common than the complaints of play biting. So play biting it's hard to differentiate, I think, for many people, like I said before, from defensive biting, because often cats who are play biting will kind of lie on their side or on their back, and they'll flatten their ears, and they'll be pretty aroused, and they'll grab you with their claws or their paws. And but the difference is that cats who are playing are generally silent, and they'll include other kind of play behaviors like stalking, and they might climb up on you and jump on you and try to get up on your shoulder. And so it can happen, this type of behavior can happen during play. So like you can play with a cat and the cat gets really excited and starts biting you, but it can also happen when the caregiver is just kind of hanging out and not really paying attention, and it could be the way that the cat gets you to play. It happens a lot in cats who left their moms really early. So did you guys see that article that I posted recently about early weaning age having to do with aggression? Did anybody see that?
Yeah, I saw it.
Yes. I saw that, and it seems like we wean the cats fairly early to gruel the bottle babies. You can't really do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's partially the actual weaning itself, but also, separating the cat from the mom. And, I've been talking to Pam a lot about what we can do to reduce the effects of early separation from mom. I mean, there are some things that, like for example, in the past it's always been recommended, I think Alley Cat Allies or some other really, respected authority, that it's okay to, or it's recommended to separate cats from their mom at like 8 weeks or so. And that's always been what I've learned. But according to this article, it was the age of 12 weeks that correlated with, less risk of aggression later in life. It's definitely something that can be looked at. It made me also think about Ken Ramirez, and I think he was in a condor project where he was raising condors and trying to, reintroduce them into nature. Some of you guys might have heard of it, where he had a group that was, had baby condors, and they just kind of fed them and, took care of their very, very basic needs, like feeding and keeping them the right temperature and so on, keeping them clean. And they released them, and then the condors would just die. They were dying, at alarming rates. They were running into, power cables and so on. And anyway, to keep this story rather short, he found that raising the condors with like these puppet parent condors really increased the chances of survival because they had condors kind of demonstrate, you know, behaviors that would help them survive in the wild. So anyway, it's not that these cats are going out into the wild, but we might, you know, I was trying to figure out with Pam ways that we could best approximate life with other cats with our kittens. So that's an ongoing project. So with play biting, some recommendations. Oh, I've got to show you this video. So, you know, I was searching for play biting or love biting, and I found this video. So this guy says his what do you notice about this video? Is there anything interesting, or just what do you see generally?
Well, I'm wondering, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Because I really don't know. I mean, because I've played with my cats like that in the past, but I had been thinking that that was a bad thing because it would teach them to bite.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, playing with cats with your hands is kind of a general no. You don't want to do that because, you know, as they practice putting their mouth and claws on your hands, that's going to be a behavior that's paid off, you know, and it's going to become a strong behavior. So the more you practice it, the more likely it's going to occur. And then when that kitten grows up, is that something you really want the cat to do? Cats really love their social play. Do you really want that cat to play with you in that way? So yeah, I think you're right. Anything else that's, so first of all, playing with hands, it's not a good thing. But what else do you notice in that video, or do you notice something? Because I saw something interesting in that video. Let's watch it again.
Melissa, I noticed that the cat is keeping all of its claws in. It's not being too rough.
Yeah, the cat is definitely sheathing their paws, and that's a good eye because a lot of people can't see those things. So, very good. And you can see how like this behavior looks very similar to defensive behavior. Like it's hard to tell. Okay, so what I'm seeing is that it looks like at some point, now I don't know because I wasn't there and I didn't communicate with this person, but it looks like there are sometimes that cat's just trying to get away. And then when the cat tries to get away, the person makes some sounds or like they wiggle their hands to get the cat more involved. What do you think about that? Is that happening? Is that my imagination?
Yeah, no,
I kind of noticed that too. It looks like at one point he tries to like stretch out towards the bars on the bed, almost like he's like, okay, I'm getting sick of this.
Yeah,
and then the person brings their hand back.
Yeah, and then there's that kind of
Right
the
here.
stare just there.
Mm-hmm.
So is this play or is this defensive? It's really hard to tell.
Maybe it started off as play and now the cat's like starting to be like, okay, I'm starting to get annoyed with this. I'm starting to get over this game.
Right. Exactly. And so, I mean, either way, whether or not the cat is really just inappropriate playing or the person's just, you know, in the process of teaching them inappropriate play, or the cat's truly being defensive, it's a great idea to remove the hands from that equation. You know, hands are just for affection and, you know, opening cans and things like that. But, you know, when the hand touches you, that should be an affectionate thing. Or it should be, you know, it should be things that are for care for the animal, not necessarily for display or, you know, getting them really excited. So the first thing is, of course, you know, you're going to make sure that there are appropriate ways of playing with the cat. Are they getting enough enrichment? Are they, you know, are they having do they have an outlet for that desire that's appropriate? Use appropriate toys. So that means not hands. If you're going to do interactive play, I also recommend not a small toy. Something, if you're going to play with them with a larger toy, maybe a larger, aside from the wands, larger plush toys so that they can really grab onto them and not get your hand by accident, because even if it happens by accident, it can become part of the routine of play. Also, to avoid frustration, I recommend avoiding laser pointers. Now, there are appropriate ways of using laser pointers. So if people ask me that, you know, I'm not going to say, no, don't use laser pointers, but generally just kind of using the laser pointer and wiggling it around, that's not a game by itself. It's got to include some kind of tangible toy that the cat can sink their teeth into. Just remember that the game is all about predation behaviors. That's what the cat is trying to practice. And so if you have a laser pointer and then the cat can never catch anything and there's no satisfaction, what's going to happen there? The cat's going to get super frustrated, and that can lead to biting too. So I've seen a lot of problem behaviors grow out of using laser pointers, but you can use them properly. Okay, so, and then you also want to schedule times, multiple times a day for these younger, higher energy cats to play. Some people, like I was talking to you about before, like they can't get a dog, but they really want a pet, so they get a cat despite the fact that they don't have a lot of time. But cats, especially young cats, need these daily training sessions or daily play sessions. So what does it mean when play is, what does it mean when play is structured? You know, what kind of play is structured and appropriate? These are games with rules. Games with rules and games that allow the cat to calm down and have a choice. So hopefully Suzanne will be able to demonstrate this with one of her girls. So you want there to be rules, you want the cat to be able to calm down, and you want the game to approximate predation. So there's going to be like at the beginning, there's going to be, it's going to build up to exciting, it's going to build up to some really exciting part in the play where the cat gets to catch the toy, and then it's going to slowly taper down. That's really important that you taper, that wind down play gradually. Okay, so, oh yeah, I have to stop sharing.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So these guys are not being very helpful, I think is the word. I guess because they've been eating, now they don't really want to play. But we have a whole heap of wand toys here that I guess we use for people who work a lot with the dogs. I hadn't really thought about it, but Melissa mentioned it earlier. It's quite like playing with the dogs with a flirt pole. So this is one of Stripey's favorite toys. We'll see if she's gonna be interested. Something outside the window.
Suzanne, switch back to view visual.
Oh, you don't see me?
Oh no, yeah, I guess you're not the...
You're not the main visual.
Did that do anything? I pressed a button.
Can you see me now?
You got it.
Perfect, thank you. Okay. So yeah, so we've got the toy, and I'm trying to entice Stripey to play with it. And she's not even looking at it right now. She's been very not
Do you usually play in that room, or, I mean, I know you do a lot of training stuff there.
We do. I think the problem is at this time of day, this is their sleep time. So we do stuff in the morning, and then obviously in the house is a bit of activity at lunchtime and then evening time. But this time really is their. So she's more engaged at looking at the screen than she is at me.
Yeah, I know. It's a great point though, because I think a lot of people get bummed, or like I don't think they understand how important it is when I say to schedule these things in the cat schedule. Like when you're going to have daily training and daily play with the cat, that it should happen at certain times of the day. Or when you schedule petting, that's going to happen at certain times of the day, so the cat can learn to expect those things around your schedule. So the petting wouldn't be happening during working from home, unless you want your cat to be constantly asking you to play with them, or constantly asking for training or petting while you're working. I wouldn't recommend doing that. Oh.
No.
No? Okay, well, maybe just describe what you would want to see.
I know. So I guess with these guys, really when you're playing with the wand toy, you want to really replicate things that they would normally stalk in nature. So whether it's an insect or a bird or something, we don't want to be doing like this, because it kind of, and hang it up in front of their face, because it teaches them to kind of jump up and grab it. But we want to really just try and encourage them by playing in front of them. No. Interesting.
Oh, girls.
I know. I think that's her emphatically telling me she doesn't want to play. Let's
No, thanks.
Like, Mom, leave us alone. No.
Oh, goodness.
I
You know what's
know.
great? Never work with animals and kids, right?
Exactly. I promise you, my cats do like affection from me, and they do like to play with me. You want to play with this one? No. So I guess the theory is we want to mimic the play that happens in the wild. So we want to mimic the kind of maybe slow movement and then fast starting movement and then slow, fast starting. And generally what you will find is these two will follow it with their paws and their mouths and try and pounce on it and catch it. And same deal, we want them to like be able to kind of catch it, pounce on it, play with it. But the other important thing is we've got to really remember that this is to mimic their natural kind of instincts and their natural behavior. So in the wild, when they are stalking something, they pounce on it, catching it. They might play with it a little while, but normally it also finalizes in them eating it. So it's really important to perhaps give them a treat at the end of it. And the other good thing about that is it kind of signals to them that playtime is over. But for these two, playtime is definitely over.
Playtime never started.
I know.
It's so funny, the looks on their face. They're just like, what? Okay. I mean, that's okay. I think it's fine just to know that there should be a structure, a pattern to play for cats. And it's not just you know, throwing the toy around and flicking the toy all over. It's, you know, that the prey moves, like think about the movement of a cockroach, you know, like scuttling along and then stopping and then scuttling along and stopping and hiding behind things and going under things and, you know, around corners. And, you know, and then the cat moves and then the cockroach moves away fast, right? Like I try to have the, oh, here we go. I try to have the toy respond like a prey item would. Like, so if the cat were, you know, put their paw or tried to touch the toy, then I would have the toy scuttle away. And then when the cat finally catches the toy, I try to have the toy kind of struggle, like struggling, like trying to get away, and then eventually moving more and more slowly until the toy dies, and then give them some treats. It sounds crazy, but it's really nice to have that structure because cats can get frustrated if you stop right in the middle at the height of the play. they can get scared. Like I've seen many cats get scared of people waving the wand in a crazy way in front of them. And people can't often tell the difference between when a cat is swatting the wand because they're scared and when they're actually trying to hunt something. Any questions about appropriate play? Here we go. Like recently, PC and I were seeing a consult with a lady who had the cat who's biting quite often. PC, do you remember this? And she, you know, she would play with the cat and she was getting the cat all excited and she would just suddenly drop the wand and walk away in the middle of the play. That was the one where the cat was biting her many times every day and drawing blood.
Oh,
Hands were just
you have a
all-
log on how many times the cat would bite her. Yeah.
Yeah. It was great because eventually, so the recommendations were we had her make some enrichment toys to keep the cats busy or to keep the cat busy while she was working. And what else did we I remember that you were trying to come up with ways for her to keep the cat away from her while she was working.
I remember the most important part was keep the cat occupied, for sure. We did try to ask her to leave, just go in the bathroom or something like that when the cat is getting really worked up. What else? And always play in one area only and just kind of have a more structure. This area is for play because I remember she was saying that the cat would go into the bedroom and bite her. And something similar to that.
Yes, because she was going into the bedroom and biting the adopter, so to get attention or to get her to play with her, and then she closed off the bedroom, but then the cat was biting her while she was working. So we had the living room be the play area, and otherwise the play wasn't something that she could expect in other areas. So she would not be successful in getting her mom to play with her in the work area. And the other thing we did was we had her train the cat to offer some behaviors to ask for play. So in the beginning, remember the cat was jumping on her and climbing her. And so the lady figured, oh, well, she wants to play, so she would play with her. And that, of course, was getting worse and worse all the time because the cat was like, oh, is this how I can get the lady to play with me? This is how I get mom to play with me, by climbing her legs and biting her. So instead, I think we had her sitting. So when the cat sat and in the living room, the special play area, then she got to play. Okay, well, let's go on. Got not a lot of other stuff, but all right. Share screen. Okay, so here's another big one that we see all the time. It's handling related biting. A lot of people like to call this overstimulation, and I really, I'm not a fan of the term overstimulated or overstimulation because it's kind of a label. Like I feel like it's a label that people use to describe behaviors that they don't really understand. Like they don't really understand why the cat feels one way or the other. And it's also a label on the cat, like this cat just gets overstimulated really easily, and it doesn't kind of describe a plan that can solve this problem. So handling related biting is something that happens when somebody has touched or tried to touch the cat, especially if they're going to do something more invasive like hold them, hug them, pick them up, touch certain parts of their bodies like their feet or their abdomen. In some cats, it's the rear end. That's quite invasive. They don't want that hind end touched. And it looks like we were talking about the quick head turn. You can see a lot of stress in the cat, you know, like the rotated ears, the hard eyes, and like flicking tail. And there might be some hissing. There might be some swatting. So oftentimes the cat might, you know, like we were talking about with this cat right in the beginning when I was showing the cat who does the love bite, they might try to kind of ignore the petting, or they might look away or try to move away. And what makes this really difficult is that caregivers, they don't feel like they can predict when a cat does that. These cats are often labeled as unpredictable because the cat's friendly and the cat comes up to them, and the cat really looks like they love their caregiver, but there are just some times where they bite. If you keep a log, it's really easy to see that this biting always happens after there's been some petting. So here's an example. It's beautiful. I love big orange cats. Creamsicle cat. Whoops. I think in this case, I think that, you know, with the length of time that the cat, I think a lot of people might think, oh, he's overstimulated, because they don't want to necessarily say that the person was doing. I think like overstimulated kind of takes the blame off the person in a way, because or the activity that was causing the behavior. In any case, imagine that somebody were caressing you or scratching you, and it can be nice to have like a good back scratch, or it can be nice to have a loving caress. But just imagine that a person is just kind of caressing you in the same spot, just over and over and over, like they're watching television, and they're just kind of, you know, not engaging with you, but just kind of touching you over and over and over again. That can be quite enervating, really annoying. So I can see that the guy petting the cat knows what's coming. And the cat clearly tells the person, so it's not something, look, it's not a surprise for the guy, and the cat knows that they're not feeling comfortable and tries to communicate it to the guy. Right there. Oh, why did you keep petting him? Right, anything else, anything that I might have missed here? There's the eye contact, like turning towards the hand. Did I miss anything? Okay, so, and then, you know, a lot of people also find the cat to be unpredictable because they might do it with some people rather than others. Some people can be just less good about following the petting etiquette. Well, I'm not eating the food. Matt's gonna try to get Fox inside. Here, give him a little. Here, get him. Here. All right. So let's see. What do we do when we are faced with this handling-related biting? Okay, so it's really important with caregivers that you go over, you know, what the cat is trying to tell. Take some video and go over the video with the person, because that is you know, a great way of letting people know what they're doing that predicts the petting, and what the cat is doing to let them know beforehand. What I mean here when I say a cortisol vacation, I mean, if you have a cat that's been practicing this handling related biting for a really long time, then I would tell the person, just try not to pet them for a couple weeks. Like, try not to touch them for a couple weeks, and just give them a vacation from that, because the cat can associate the person with this feeling of being overhandled. Like that cat, Cleo, from the very beginning of the presentation, you could tell that the cat was, Cleo knew that when the lady approached her, she knew what to expect. So if you take a bit of a cortisol vacation, it can really help weaken that association. And then you're gonna follow the petting etiquette that we described before, you know, pet only when the cat solicits petting, and make sure that each specific kind of bout of petting is very short. It's just a few seconds long. Okay, and the other thing is, if the cat has, you know, a more pervasive handling issue, so if you feel like the cat is showing signs that the caregiver is showing signs that they're not welcoming handling from the caregiver much at all, then you might want to put the cat through a counter conditioning and desensitization program. So you would, you know, you would gradually introduce petting in association with something that they really like. Probably treats is the best way to go. Like, you don't really want to have the cat associating petting with play. So you would, and you would also train a default signal, a default behavior that would let you know that the cat was receptive to play, to petting. So what we often do at the shelter is, when we're first introducing our Frady cats to contact, we'll train eye contact. So before we're even touching the cat, we'll train eye contact. And when we get it really good, so we see eye contact, we say yes, we give them a treat. Once they're very fluent at that, then we can try to reward the eye contact. Instead of giving them a treat right away, we'll start to kind of extend our hand towards them just a teeny tiny bit. And then we give them a treat. So they look at us, we extend our hand, and then we give them a treat. So if you've ever worked with me with the Frady cats at the shelter, you would have done this before. But if not, hopefully Suzanne can get this with one of her girls. I'm pretty sure this will work out because they really want the food, right? Stop sharing.
Or do you want me to do it now?
Yeah.
Sorry. I was like, why is everybody waiting?
Yes, we want you to show you like the default behavior and counter conditioning, like putting your hand out and then maybe counter conditioning touching.
So they will actually give me.
I think they'll really want to do this because they really want the food after all this time.
Stripey's giving me eye contact. Yes. 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 Yes.
Good.
Oh. Yes, good girl. Yes, good girl. So it's really easy for the eye contact, yes, because, you know, they will give you eye contact. If your cat, you know, feels comfortable, she's going to give you eye contact. Yes, good girl. Yes. So then I would wait until she gives me eye contact.
So you can see that Suzanne is waiting for eye contact and then responding to the eye contact by extending her hand. And what that does is it has the cat start to initiate the whole handling exercise. So the handling exercise is really Suzanne holds out her hand and then gives a treat, so that you build the association between the hand extension and the treat. But the cat now knows eye contact and can initiate that sequence of events by making eye contact. So what that does is it gives the cat control over the whole counter conditioning exercise. And this is one thing that we use with our fraidy cats all the time to get them really interested in making contact with us. And at some point, because of the auto shaping effect, the cat will inevitably automatically touch our hand. So you can see that there's automatic kind of reaching for the hand. Yay! And if you guys don't know about auto shaping, a few weeks back, we covered that in the talk. So I think that's on the Facebook group. It was recorded on our YouTube channel. Okay, do you guys have questions about that? Because I know that it's not obvious. It's definitely not something that I learned when I was in my internship.
You see, actually, Stripey's now initiating, like, he's actually rubbing herself against my hand. She does it.
Oh, goodness. She's got the script all mixed up.
No.
Okay, well, let's just move on, just because in the interest of time, I'm going to finish it up really quickly. Share screen. Okay. Okay, so here's the fear-related biting, and fear-related biting is really similar. So I'm not going to go all into it, but the difference is really that the cat doesn't have an established relationship with the person. They might start showing stress much further down, much earlier than cats who just have handling related issues. So like you just enter the room and you can see that the cat's starting to get triggered. And they can be triggered by actual touching or attempts to touch them, but they can also be triggered just by you appearing. And so, I really, to me, this is really a pet topic, because I always find everybody's got an opinion. Everybody who's worked with feral cats has an opinion about it. But, you don't have to, when I hear stories about people working with a feral cat for like 7 years, there's one, a person's like, I've been working with this cat for 7 years and I'm just touching the cat. For me, that means that they weren't taking a constructional approach to working on the cat, because cats need much more than just time to earn your trust. So when I hear people say, oh, it just takes time, I'm like, no, it doesn't just take time. And it doesn't just take food. It takes a lot more than that, especially if you want it to take more than 7 years. So, so for example, you want to keep in mind, what level of exposure the cat has to you that triggers them, and you want to stay further away from them than that. So if you coming in the door triggers them, then you're going to have to be cognizant of that, and you're not going to want to come closer. If you, reaching out to give them a treat triggers them, then you're going to want to manage that and find a different way to expose them, a different way to deliver the treat to them. So you're going to do your best so that the cat never shows signs of being afraid around you, so that they don't practice that behavior. Don't take it for granted that that's a feral cat and that feral cats can do fearful things. That cat is a cat, and the cat is just responding to the trigger, to a specific trigger. So their fearfulness is not their idea. And when you do interact with that cat, have a plan, have a structured plan of where you want things to go. What are you conditioning that cat to accept? Are you conditioning them to accept your presence? Are you conditioning them to feel comfortable with your hand coming near them? Are you conditioning them to, feel comfortable with you handing them a treat and touching them? Those things are things that you should keep in mind. It's not just a matter of feeding them and just, visiting them every day. You have to have a very specific plan in mind. And I really encourage you, if you guys do work with fearful cats or feral cats, to check out Angela Renfro's Fearful to Friendly protocol. I've posted it on our group page, but I can post it again. It's free and it's great if you have some time to read it. And it's very detailed, really detailed instructions about how to get from totally feral socially to like pet cat who's sitting in your lap. And, okay, I'm just angry because Fox came back not liking that I'm doing this talk. He liked the barking talk. He doesn't like this talk. So anyway, oh no, I didn't get rid of that leash reactivity thing. Got to do. So there are tons of types of biting, like I was saying earlier in the talk, and we're not going to cover everything. Redirected behavior is another really common one, and just because it's a huge topic in and of itself, because you have to deal with the secondary. It's a secondary behavior, and you have to deal with the primary triggers. But there's a lot of other types of biting. Maybe we can save that for another time. So in general, these are the takeaways. Like if you ask me the main things that people should know when they're seeing cat bites in consult. And the first thing is that cat bites can be dangerous. I told you about this lady who almost died that I was seeing when a cat bit her and caused really bad cellulitis, and she was hospitalized and she almost died. She was an elderly lady, so that explains it. But in risky situations where you have some bad bites, where the caregiver's really not able to predict what's going on and the bites happen really often, and there are kids and seniors present, you really, and when the person is considering rehoming the cat, you really want to make sure that you're the most skilled person to see that case. So, you might want to refer that case to someone else. I feel really comfortable if I was in over my head referring a case to somebody who was, to a specialist in that particular behavior problem. And make sure before you do any training that the cat is healthy and they have a fulfilled life, that all their enrichment needs are being met. Make sure that you, whatever situations lead up to biting, that you tell the person to, you help the person find ways to avoid those situations. Like in that case with PC, we had the person avoid being in the situations where the cat was biting her. And keep a log so that you can tell what your baseline is, so you really know if your advice is really working or not, if you have to make changes. Very often the first thing that you ask the person to do is not going to be the right thing. And that's okay as long as you can recognize the pattern. Involve training, because very often cat caregivers don't realize that the effect that positive reinforcement-based training can have, or non-aversive training. Instead, cat caregivers often just kind of, they immediately start using the squirt bottle, or shouting at the cat, or tapping them on the nose, or grabbing them by the scruff. And the reason that those things are so common is because they're things that feel good for a lot of humans to do. They feel like kind of cathartic for people to do, and those behaviors meaning our use of aversives on cats is very easy, because it's easy for us to think that the behavior is being resolved because at the moment the cat stops doing it. But you all know that it can cause the behavior to worsen over time. But yeah, I mean, there's really no reason to use aversives with biting cats, because that can make things a lot worse. And whatever the motivator for the cat to bite you, the cat needs another way of getting what they want, right? So if the cat is biting you because they want food from you, they need to have another way. If they're biting because they want attention, they need to have another way of getting that. If they're biting because they want the choice to move away from you, then they shouldn't have to bite you to have that choice, whether or not you're touching them or whether or not you're holding them. And lastly, cats are predictable. A healthy cat is a predictable cat. And so don't ever let anybody tell you that cats are just gonna bite. They're not just gonna bite. There are reasons for these behaviors to happen. Behavior does not happen in a bubble. So anyway, if you have any questions, you can ask them now. I know that we're running really late. We probably should schedule more than an hour for these talks. And here's a picture of me with one of my favorite cats ever from Prince for Life. This was Vernon. And Vernon was a behavior cat who was going to be put down at a municipal shelter. And he also had a bite history. And, you know, he was a very feral presenting cat. And just kind of following a lot of the recommendations that I gave you today, he was just my best friend when he was at the shelter. So if you don't think of your questions right now, or if you don't, if you don't have time or you don't feel it's appropriate to ask them now, you can always just email me and I'm happy to respond to you. Anybody?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you for the Google form that you've used for the bites.
Oh, sorry, I didn't say that again. There's a lot of dog wrestling going on around me.
Sorry. Could you share that Google form that you've used for recording the bites? I don't know if you've.
Yeah, I'll post it. I'll post the form that I use. Like I'll post the problem behavior form and I'll post the specific bite one. The one I use for bite cases is going to be a bit different because I try to tailor it to each.
Yeah, no, obviously.
Yeah. Anything else? No? Is awake? Okay. And just let me know if you guys have any ideas for future talks. As you might know, we're doing a bunch of talks just about how to address certain behaviors in consult. So these wouldn't be typical, but just because I thought it would be nice to see how we use the consult format in different types of behavior problems.
Yeah, definitely the intra-cat aggression would be a great one to do.
Yeah, inter-cat aggression would be really good. It is another one that has a lot of talking though. I kind of want, I might want to intersperse it with something that's more actually training, especially since I'll be at the shelter next week. So.
Hey. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming. Hope to see you next week. Bye guys, I'll see you at the shelter.